Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode. Uh, we are discussing about social aging, and we have our world famous speaker, Professor Edward and Professor David Smith. First, I would like to give chance Professor Edward.
Oh, thank you very much. This is a very interesting and broad topic, social aging, which it implies that societies, when they age, can either age well, like a good wine, or they can age badly, like some people age physically and they end up at the end of their lives decrepit and sick and so forth. Um, well, I'll just let me frame the issue first. Um, when we talk about societies, we're usually talking about culture. Culture, I define as the values, priorities, assumptions, and expectations that we share with one another. Uh, we on this call have certain priorities and values and all that we share, and that's why we're able to have these very interesting discussions. Just the focus that you have, Sharif, indicates that we have a community of values here. It's really great. Um, but culture, values, priorities, assumptions, expectations are manifest in social institutions, whether it's a family, whether it's clubs, whether it's other forms of organization, some schools, for example, and the like. And of course, in political institutions, whether an institution is democratic, whether it's republic in the sense of it has, separation of powers and division of government and so forth. So culture is manifest in institutions, and again, it all comes down to something that's in our heads, what we share in terms of values, priorities, assumptions, and expectations. And of course, over time, as technology changes and as the material situations change, societies have to change accordingly. They have to keep up with the times, so to speak. And this, of course, can challenge those values, priorities, assumptions, and expectations. The example I know best, of course, is the United States. The United States started very much with the value of individual liberty. People came to this country because they wanted to practice their religion and they were being oppressed in Europe. They came here because they wanted to have their own farms. They wanted to have their own businesses. They wanted to run their own lives. They wanted to create their own mini societies, you might say, that helped them flourish and prosper. But they wanted that liberty. They didn't want it coming from the top down. They wanted to be able to do it amongst themselves. Freedom, individual liberty is really the defining attribute of the United States. But when you talk about an aging society, think of this. When the United States was officially declared July 4th, 1776, we were pretty much a rural country. And Thomas Jefferson, of course, who was the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, had a vision of sort of yeoman farmers, very similar to sort of ancient Rome, the Roman Republic, where you had farmers who worked the land and who prospered that way, and who came together occasionally to, in their democratic institutions to determine public policy. But that was the vision. Of course, what happened is our society aged and became an industrial society. I think the last time we were officially a rural society was in the early part of the 20th century. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but we were still pretty much, most people were living in rural areas. And today, of course, most people, the vast majority of people live in cities and in suburban areas in the United States. And the economy is not based on yeoman farmers. It's obviously based on technology and industry and so forth. But the point is, our institutions had to change. And for the most part, they changed for the better. Of course, you had a lot of injustice in the United States that had to be dealt with. Obviously, slavery was the big one. We had a civil war where the slaves were freed. But then it took another century up until the 1950s and 60s to deal with the fact that there still was not only prejudice in people's minds and hearts, but institutional barriers. For example, if you were Black, you weren't allowed to do certain things. You couldn't go to certain places and so forth. And these were called Jim Crow laws. Fortunately, we got rid of those, and I could go over all the other progress that was made in the 1960s. Today, unfortunately, in the United States, I would argue that we're in a kind of a second civil war, that the fundamentals of this country, and I would say, by the way, of the Enlightenment that goes back hundreds of years, it's not just a United States thing, are being challenged at a very basic level. It's not just individual liberty that's being challenged. It's the whole notion of science, the Enlightenment notion that we should have open societies where we discuss things like we're doing right now on this show, where we allow people, free choice, where we're tolerant, even though I might disagree with you on one matter or another. Well, as long as you're not, pulling a gun on me, you have your beliefs, I have my beliefs. Those things are being challenged at a much more fundamental level than I think at any time in American history. And unfortunately, this poison has been spreading elsewhere. A lot of it came from Europe, especially from Germans after World War II, the so-called postmodernists who basically reject the whole Enlightenment enterprise. And so in that sense, our society has aged well, and as much as certainly in the United States and Europe has gotten out of feudalism, has become modern societies, people now have more liberty and so forth, but it's being undermined. It's not aging very well in this sense. This is where there's incredible opportunities for other countries, especially in the Asian Pacific area, because they prospered so much by aging well, in the sense that if you take a look at Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea, and Taiwan, they aged very well. They went from fairly backwards places to, of course, industrial giants. Now, unfortunately, the communists in China are really cracking down on Hong Kong, and that's a serious issue. We can talk about that later. But again, societies can age well and adjust to changes, or they can age badly, as unfortunately I think the United States is doing today. And so we have to work to make sure that they age in the right direction, shall we say.
Excellent, Professor Edward. Professor David Smith.
Yeah, I like what Edward said, particularly about aging like a fine bottle of wine.
Because I'm not drinking it right now. I'll do that later. Okay, David?
Because what really I like to use about that is an analogy, is that when a wine ages, it becomes more complex. But as it ages more, it actually begins to become simpler, and its range of things decrease. And that is really part of what social aging is that we see that as we age, our life changes a lot while society changes. And, we go through stages of social aging. We're a child, we're an adolescent, we're an adult, we're an older person. And aging is really sociologically defined as the combination of biology, the psychology, and the social processes that affect us as we're growing older. And thankfully, growing older is a gradual process. And even though it's complex when you look at all the different elements of it, but they do not really totally correspond with each other. And we see now a lot of talk about how our biological age, our social age, are different dates and times. And we see that happening more and more. What I like to say on this one is that we've seen television programs, movies, and things begin to try to think about how we get young versus how we age gracefully. How many times have we seen television
你把那边关一关好不好？你这个
happen where we wash away our gray hair? We are shown as to be younger, and Edward, I have a little bit of it right here too. But that is part of the social aging phenomenon too, in that we see it. What I'd like to say with social aging is one of the study trends of it is that as we age, we actually shrink our circle of friends. We shrink our circle of engagement because as you age, you want quality over quantity. But when we're young, we tend to go the other way and want the quantity as a sign that we're liked, and the social constructs are still working out with the regenerative healthcare today, and with a bunch of the advances, particularly in genomics and how that is affecting health. We're seeing the trends to go back to increasing life expectancy. And social aging is going to become a new definition as part as we see extended life cycles, lifetimes, and how that's going to impact things like the future of work, like we discussed yesterday. How is it going to impact things like climate change? Because if we're extending that, we will have more humans consuming, and we'll have to provide for them a greater requirement upon producing food and other elements like that. So the concept of social aging is, while complex, I can tell you I would like to socially age well. And the alternatives is actually bad if you look at it. And that's the promise as we look at social aging is, how do we put the things in place? How do we pull together society reacting to social aging? How do we look at the government and what the government's going to do? You know, here in the United States, we have a thing called a Social Security Fund that supports people who have retired by age out of the workforce. It is running out of money because there's more people living longer and more people draining its resources. You know, and if our life expectancy increases as social aging goes along, what's it going to do to that? How is the healthcare system going to change and adapt with social aging? The internet. The internet has been a very interesting tool with social aging, and it has actually enhanced people's ability to maintain a vital part of society as they age in it. Where back 200 years ago, once you hit a certain age, you were almost expected to go sit down and live out what little bit of life you had, and not be a burden to the others around you. And thankfully, we've passed through those hallmarks of social aging and are more enlightened today. But social aging affects everyone on the face of the earth until we figure out how to extend life further. But even if we increase the age, there are characteristics that we have to understand with social aging, of how we interact with people, how we interact with generations. You know, yesterday we mentioned that there's 6 generations of people in the workforce for the first time in the history of the world. Well, how do we, with the social aging, work across all those generations with their different tenets for communication styles, their different tenets for how they want to receive information? Uh, and how do we handle it where we effectively communicate across the social aging landscape? So those are a few of my initial thoughts, Sharif.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Professor Ching.
Okay, people should all age socially like my 10 teachers. Okay, they are all top thinkers in the world. And I absorbed all their knowledge. Actually, we sort of come together because of the similarity in our knowledge. So I got lots of knowledge. And I spend my time dancing and thinking. So I don't have much time to really tell people how little knowledge they have. And it's very sad. Today's society is money-oriented society. I think these people, when they get old, they'll be very, very boring. And also, they don't know much about themselves. They don't know much about knowledge. Okay, it takes lots of knowledge to live a healthy life. Okay, like me. Okay, I don't feel I'm getting old. You see. In fact, after COVID-19, I think I'm again go back to getting younger. Okay, you know, So this is not easy. Okay, COVID-19 make me feel old for the first time. It only lasts 2 years, but the 2 years sufficient to make me feel a little bit, get some experience about being old. It's so I now also have knowledge of how to turn an old person into gradually into a young person. Okay, so this to me, it's again I say the main point I try to make, it's rather sad. People who are not working on knowledge, say when they get old, they don't have, most important, they don't have way to take care of themselves. You see, when you take care of yourself, the most important thing is knowledge. Okay, you got to know how the body functions. And you have to sort of know something about the reality, nature, okay, how the nature treats us. The concept we have today, based on science, is well, actually it's harmful. It's not even helpful. I joined this longevity contest, just try to give them some idea about my personal experience, which are very extremely valuable. But those people, they did lots of things. Lots of people joined, and I see what they did. They basically what they did is totally useless to me. Okay, I'm not interested in some worm can live for a long time, or some mouse can outrun other mouse. I'm not interested. I'm interested in what they can do for me. Okay, if they can just give me a little bit information, I'll be very grateful. But I got practical nothing. Okay, and what they promote usually are not completely correct. So they are good. There's a benefit, there's harm. Okay, and they don't have personal experience, or they cannot tell. Okay, I just doing experiment on myself, so I know what is ultimately good or bad. Okay, I try to promote this theory of aging. The steady state theory of aging. In other words, when you get old, you have to get into a steady state. You don't want yourself to be acting like a person who got lots of growth hormone. Your growth hormone dropped to 20% or even 10% of your when you were young. So you're not growing, but you still got some growth hormone. So you need to sort of live a life like old, not an old person, like a very healthy old person. Okay, basically I feel is the cells are growing old, but I keep them very healthy. So if I keep them healthy for a long time, my age, I think the age will be reduced, but it's much more gradual, much not as fast as the health. Okay, they measure my age. They say I'm 48 years old. I think I have the health of 48 years old, but I don't think I'm really 48 years old. I think my cells are in the range of, say, 60 years old. It's not as good as my health. You see, so to get your health right is very difficult. To get your age done. Today's world, the medical society, the health society, they have no idea what is going on. Okay. I don't know where another thing I mentioned is I'm also the person who tried to promote the idea of a logical life science. Another life science should not be completely based on experimentation, like science. Okay, life science should be more like computer science, based on logic. Okay, people need logical training so they know, they have some kind of belief. Then they try to reason them out. Just like in computer science, you don't need much knowledge. You know the program, you do things, and you get the computer to do whatever you want, with software. You say this is DNA. DNA in the life science is simply the program and documentation of DNA. You see, you can program a human being with 0, 1, 2, 3 if you're smart enough. So this idea is not accepted by life scientists. That's very sad. They don't even want to discuss this. Okay, there were a big fight between life scientists and computer scientists. I was in the early stage when computer scientists and life scientists tried to combine their knowledge, but it was very difficult. But today I try to tell them, you should look at both sides. You use some science, but ultimately it is computer science which is more like life science. Okay, it's based on logic, and the one has to have logic training. And I use all this knowledge, to guide myself in my health. Okay, so as long as I'm concerned, I'm really the top authority in longevity. People don't know I don't know how old are you, David? David is 65. You have to get to my age. I'm 80. Another year and another 15 months, I'll be 80. You see, you have to be at that age, then you get into steady state. You get a steady state when you're 72. But you try to live up to 72 is difficult. Okay. All my professors, they stop exercise at 72. Okay. Lofty they stopped dancing at 72. Dayu will stop play tennis at 72. They are very athletic people. Okay. 72 is a difficult hurdle to pass. By the time of 75, I had a video of my dancing. Okay, that's 75. That looks very sharp. Okay, Sheriff and David all saw that. That's 75. Okay, now I'm close to 80. Okay, it would be amazing if I still the best dancer in San Francisco by the time I'm 80. It's unimaginable, you see. It's just unbelievable, actually. You see. So this is a good subject, but it's a very unfortunate subject for today's society. It will take a lots of learning. Okay, it's too long to really give you an idea how it's done. Okay, basically you have to take care of every cell in your body. Okay, just try to get down as down to earth as possible. Okay, do many things that are good. Okay, the worst thing is to go the scientific way. to be honest, okay, you got to use lots of perception. You have to observe nature. You have to deal with reality. Okay, this is very, very, very hard. So I just give you some this very very rough description of where we stand. I hope other people will say more things. I love to listen to them. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Adam. Mr. Adam, can you hear me?
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Sharif. I think we should be a double-pronged or a multi-pronged strategy to life extension and the aging, whereas well as extending biological lifespans radically, indefinitely one day. We want to do that coupled with engineering high enough life qualities so that it would be worth our while to battle through all the challenges and roadblocks in life extension. It will happen eventually, hopefully, within our lifetimes. We want to make sure that our descendants are happy enough, motivated enough, that their life is meaningful enough to make the common challenges worthwhile. We don't want people to flounder in centuries-long depression, of course. One of the most frustrating rebuttals I hear when people critique life extension and aging is, wouldn't you would? I don't know how anyone could think that there are not enough things left to discover, experience, overcome. Thus, listening bored. It's unimaginable to me how people can ask this. Maybe that says more about the person asking than such things rather than the immortalists what they're trying to achieve. And again, critique endeavor. I think they conflate extreme life extension, immortality, mortalism with the more mundane type of life extension that is closer to home, looking into a lifespan by tens and hundreds of years, which is more achievable and sooner into achievability with near future timelines and forecasts, and not so far from into the extreme future, hundreds of years from now. But I think the problem of suffering is important to consider. There've been a few deaths in unfortunately. My grandfather, he was suffering. He had dementia, so he was suffering quite bad. And so it was a relief for us and him, for us as well, witnessing his decline. And it was a relief for him too, being the sufferer, of course. So our relationship with death is very complicated. I certainly don't want to die. I don't want my loved ones and close friends to die. It's something that makes me feel very melancholic. But the death is still release for some people going through terrible pain. So our relationship with death is complex and nuanced. But as long as people have a choice, and people choose what they want, because I mean, aging and life extension is quite nuanced as well, of course, because will that mean people will be retiring later, or will people still be retiring at mid-60s and but living till 150? And of course, we want to make sure that people's life quality is not diminished, so that they don't live longer and their declines are more drawn out. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jason, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Sharif, how you doing?
Yes, I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
can you give a little more context on the topic? I know, I mean, it says social aging, so I just want to make sure I don't go on a tangent or anything.
Professor Edward, can we help my friend regarding social aging?
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I can help you define it in like one sentence here for you. We've been talking about aging in the sense of Aubrey de Grey, work, which is wonderful. But the topic is kind of how do societies age? In other words, as institutions change, as technology changes, as public policies change, and by the way, physical aging is part of what's going to determine how societies age in the future. If we're all living to 200, which is what I'm going for, by the way, and so forth. So we're looking at kind of the social impacts of societies changing, in the past and in the future, as we defined at the beginning. A society can age like a good bottle of wine and become more complex, as David points out, or it can age very badly, like some of us age and we end up at the end of our life. So, how the social implications of this issue?
Gotcha. Totally makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely multifaceted. I mean, so our society. I mean, the one thing that I think of right off the bat is we're about to have a lot of older people. much more, including yourself, maybe. But no, a lot of people. I mean, we're gonna see a lot more old people. Like the ratio between old and young, actually, before there was much more young people, and over the many years and decades, we're now shifting that proportion. So we're gonna have eventually we'll have much more old people and much less young people, especially as we're seeing, people having kids much later in life, or not having kids at all. So there's definitely that aspect. And in terms of like the quality of our aging society, I think that there's definitely going to be more changes. We think of in the future. There's like, I think it's always hard to sort of foresee what kind of technologies are we're going to have. I think it's going to be a lot different, and I think that we are going to have you have to have that expansion of experience to go along with more years. And maybe Adam was kind of alluding to this to some degree too. But we really want to have an expansion and a quality of life, and a lot of people, if they want to live longer, they really want to live better. That's the main thing, because right now we have a lot of the technology and tools to live much longer, but a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to. We haven't necessarily created a society from an aging standpoint where people want to live longer in this world. We're still seeing a lot of just the entire perception in the news, in our societies, that things are getting worse. But in reality, things are actually getting much better when you look at all the measurements, from education to poverty and things on that sort. And technology is obviously getting much better. So there is definitely going to be more changes and faster changes from an aging standpoint in our society. So what can we? I guess the question is, like, what can we do? And I'd be curious to see, your guys' thoughts. And I think that, obviously just places, forums like this, and kind of getting out the word to make a better future, I think is definitely one thing. What are your thoughts, Edward? Anything?
Professor Edward.
Oh, okay. I guess it comes right back to me. Yeah. By the way, in terms of having children later in life, there we go. Those are my little girls,
Oh, no.
and they just finished fifth grade yesterday. Well, actually, 2 days from now they'll be done. So I'm all in favor of having children, and even if you're an older guy, I'm all in favor of having children. So I'm doing my part. There was a whole fad back in the 60s that overpopulation was going to destroy us. And there's a guy named Paul Ehrlich who was so utterly, completely wrong. It's embarrassing. And he said, when we had 3.5 million people, he was going to say, well, we're all going to literally, there's no way we're going to prevent hundreds of millions of people dying in the streets because we won't have enough food. And, we have like almost 8 billion people today. We're producing more food than ever, or at least we were before the pandemic. And, it's fantastically wrong. And you are absolutely right about how we have this gulf, as I said at the beginning of the show, between the promise of technology, and everyone should, all of your listeners in the Asia Pacific area should read "The Future is Faster Than You Think" by Peter Diamandis. Get yourself, sit down with either coffee or wine or whichever you prefer, and read this book. And there's many other books that just tell how wonderful things are and can be if we have the right culture. But there are, of course, a lot of challenges. David alluded to some of our current systems. For example, when Social Security was created in this country, this is in the United States, this is a retirement system. And what happens is the government takes a little bit of your money every paycheck, puts it in an account for you, and then when you retire, you get a little bit of it back. It's dribbled back. At that time, there were about 17 workers for every retiree. So, putting in a little bit of money each month, 17 people supporting one retiree, that worked pretty well. Right now, because of the changing demographics, it's about 2 to 3 workers for every retiree. That is non-sustainable. Medicare and Medicaid are two government programs. The Medicare helps, is for people when they retire. And again, we pay into it through our paychecks. It's simply unsustainable because of changing demographics. And yet the politicians in this country want to just keep saying, we're going to give you more and more free stuff. And there's no thinking about, well, where's that free stuff going to come from? Because it's not free. Okay. We all understand that. And so there are all of these institutional changes that are going to be necessary. One thing that you mentioned about aging is what happens when you have an older population. I'm sure you discussed this yesterday when you talked about the labor markets. I am past what is traditionally retirement age in the United States, and I'm still working, and I have to work because I got 2 young kids. There's no way I can't work. And I'm excited about it. And you're going to have more and more of that as healthcare gets better. First of all, you're going to need more people in the workforce in any case. And as we get older and older, again, we're going to have changes in our social institutions and our public policies in order to make it sustainable. What I maintain is that we really do need a fundamental revolution in our institutions if our society is to age well. We have, for example, a government dominated education system that's completely out of touch with what's needed by, for example, the 100 biotech companies right here on the I-270 tech corridor in Maryland are desperate for talent, desperate for people to do the kind of aging research that you and I want to see more of. And yet the schools right here in the county where I'm living are not providing the kind of talent that are needed. There's going to have to be that kind of a revolution. There's going to have to be a revolution in our schooling system. It has to become a real education system. There's going to have to be a revolution in how businesses and enterprise and entrepreneurs work with the education system. That's one of the things I really love about what Sharif is doing, is he understands that the need for businesses and enterprises to be working together with education. That's absolutely going to be necessary in the future. And so again, I'm looking at, and the other thing is this: we're going to have to maintain the values, priorities, assumptions, and expectations of what we call generally the Enlightenment, an open society where the individual is valued, where we can have open discussions about things, where we see progress. When I say progress, I mean true progress as the natural direction and the natural values that we should have. We have, you mentioned earlier that we have a very pessimistic culture, which unfortunately we do, dominated by nihilism, pessimism, anger, and the like. And, it's basically self-defeating. It's self-crippling. A society cannot age, well, if those are its assumptions, if that everything is going to be bad, that everything is bad. And even as you look progress, you look at the incredible technology breakthroughs in, for example, human freedom, where we don't oppress women and blacks and religious minorities the way it was done in the past. We look at that incredible progress, and yet so many people, especially in the United States, unfortunately, are poisoned by a postmodernist dystopian view of society. So we have to start with our values. We have to understand what is possible. You in the Asian Pacific area, you know what's possible because you can see how Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and South Korea went from being impoverished, war-torn, to what they are today. We see what's happening in Malaysia. We see what's happening. I was just seeing about Apple Computer and some of the others looking more towards Vietnam as a place to put factories and to put resources. That possibility is there, and you just have to seize it. And that's the way a society is going to age well.
Well said. Thanks, Edward.
Thank you. Professor David Smith.
The process of aging is one that we all go through, but yet if you look at the current science of today, we're still trying to find out more about how we deal with the process of aging from a biological standpoint. We know that our telomeres get shorter and stuff, and that's part of aging. We know that as we age, For example, the muscles and tendons around our eyes dry up, and that's what causes us to change our way to view. And that's a great book on that too, Edward. And we know that, and we're beginning to do things to say that. So the science of aging is very active today, and we see that happening. The medicine of aging is still in a very infant state. In the past, a lot of the medicine of aging was to support you at end of life decisions. And we're seeing that pushed out further and further today. But societal policies really look at how they can affect the well-being of families and the individuals. And that is where we need to work a lot more on this. So it's really, how do we keep an income maintenance policy, an education policy, a social welfare policy, housing policy, health policy? And today, if I look at an aging society, the definition that they're using today is that societal aging is 14% of the population of the given region, is what they're looking at as a definition for societal aging. Well, the trends that I'm seeing, we're going to be pushing that envelope up further and further on what is the percentage of people above 65. I mean, I'm in that percentage above 65 now. And Edward is, and Hugh is. So we're in that envelope that this impacts, and we're working to see how it works. But, the social policies need to begin to be revised to really help affect all aspects of the human experience and the needs of older people. Older people face a higher risk of poverty. Older people face a higher income insecurity. We have an increased need for health and long-term care. Governments need to and are beginning to develop policies to promote successful aging, productive aging, aging in place, which is a big topic in many of them. And although population aging affects both developed and developing countries, policy challenges for developed and developing countries are really distinct in this area. And there's a lot of work that needs to be accomplished to really look at how this can work. Many of my friends who are in the social aging environment are going to other locations to where the cost for social aging is lower than it is in the United States. And we're seeing that. In Austin, many people are moving to Costa Rica, for example. It is a place where the social policies and the government policies and the economics of the area are more conducive for this percentage of the population which has aged to that point. So we need to address those. But the government policies, the societal policies, and even the healthcare policies all need to be adapted as Edward ages to the year 200 to provide him the capability to do that. So, Sharif, that's kind of where I am.
Thank you, sir. Professor Ching.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a definition for social aging. And this correspond to biological aging. You see, normally we know aging is biological. Okay, here they invent something like social aging. In other words, how do you grow in terms of your social status or social, your relation to society, basically how much knowledge you gain or whatever, position you change. as you grow old. And somehow, Edward brought up this definition, a much general definition, and this general definition actually is in relation to the invention of cultural level quotient from Posen Institute. We measure society by the way it reasons. Okay, for example, in the scientific age, everybody reasons by experimentation, experimental verification. But in our opinion, in the coming age of social science, well, we have to be mathematicians, okay? But because there's so many variables, you have to relate them together. Only mathematician can put the relation together and work on that. But today, they don't do that. They just get people who cannot get into science, can only handle very 3-4 variables to work on this idea to simplify social phenomena. I don't think they can do that, and. So basically, let's get to some, before I go into more detailed discussion of this social aging, I like to mention just something Ed would say about his parents. He said, I'm doing something which is very dangerous. When I dance, I shake my head real hard. He said, I can't move my head. Okay. Very dangerous. Okay. But it strengthens my neck. Okay. After I shake, I lose some memory. But after a few weeks, I feel my mind is getting stronger. Okay, my brain getting stronger. Okay, another way, I prefer to learn new things. I don't mind losing memory of old things. Okay, so this what I think this is the cure to dementia and Alzheimer. It's very down to us. You got to have blood going into the brain. Okay. My professor Ramusi, he's from Burma in India. He's from India. And his brain shrink by 1/3 by the time he's 80. Okay. Lofty they didn't shrink much, but by the time he's 96, he suddenly have a brain shrink down by maybe another 1/3. So there is a shrinkage of the brain. Okay. Also, for the last 3,000 years, human brain has been shrinking. I don't know if Dave or Edward knows this.
I've heard it before.
Yeah, this human brain is shrinking. Okay, just in the last 3,000 years. Why? Because we don't use our brain as much. Okay? That's why we have so many great philosophers in the past. Okay, Plato, they come to today's world. They're probably more intellectual. They're probably better thinker than most of the scientists today. You see, so the brain, you need to get down to us. Okay, not try to speculate all kinds of medicine, things like that. And also, I realized another thing from the COVID-19, that is the breathing problem. Okay, many people advise people to breathe. They show people how to breathe. They say breathe 5 minutes per day. You will improve your health. When I was young, I never think of this in breathing. I think this is rather useless, except when you're breathing, you exchange oxygen into carbon dioxide, which reduce your weight. Okay, weight reduction. It is very effective for weight reduction. But recently, after COVID-19, everybody wear masks, and the mask stop people, get the people the habit of not to breathe that much. Okay. For old people, the lungs shrink by 1/3. Okay. The lung capacity, it's not going to stay the same. And my suspicion, I just recently realized I have to go out to area where there's a very clean air to breathe micronutrition from fresh air. Okay, this is really, what some people call it a forest bath. You go to a forest and you take a bath. If you go to a mountain in Taiwan, you can improve your immunity by 10% every 2 hours of breathing. Okay. So this kind of very, very down to earth. If you want to live to be 200, okay, not 100, after you're okay, everyone will be okay in breathing until they're 70 or 80 years old. Then they start to find some problem with breathing. Okay, you want to go beyond 80, you need to look after your breathing system. You look after your lung, basically. And the lung actually also can relate to the heart. Okay, heartbeat 4 times, you breathe 1 time. Okay, that relation 1 to 4, something like that. So old people sometimes they forget to breathe, then they got a heart attack or get a stroke from the simple act of lost the habit of breathing. Okay, so this breathing, you got to have a good air and the good things. I speculate that the age limitation of 70 or 80, human age in the United States is 78 for women, 76 for men, something like that. I think this limitation is caused by pollution. Okay. The air simply is not good enough to sustain people beyond 80 years old. Okay, these are the things I speculate and nobody's helping me. Okay. They don't experience, they don't reason it. They just young people do scientific experiment, give us a lot of data, but they cannot put the data together to end up with finally it's going to improve or damage our aging process. So these are not given. So from now I like to, if I have time, to talk about this overall picture of social aging and the cultural level quotient. Like, post science, advanced science to social science to life science to robotic to self creation, then finally to fuzzy logic. Okay, social post science has advanced human technology 4,000 years beyond today's science. In other words, it's really trivial for today's establishment to talk about social aging. Okay, they don't know the future. Okay, more than that, you say pole science has a vision of knowledge from the the religion of morality 2,000 years ago. Every 6,000 years, religion changes. I expect in another 4,000 years, we have a religion of knowledge. Another 6 years, we might have a religion of alien technology. Okay. After the religion of alien technology, we will have a religion of DNA, intelligence. So in other words, Paul Science vision of knowledge is 20 years ahead of current thinking. Okay, it's very, very trivial for people to be going around talking about future views. Okay, I think they better check out on our cultural level quotient. Just this 4,000 years, I don't think they can get out. And I'm right now talking to the Federal Reserve, and I try to bring that into the age of social science. Okay, they still try to guess their way out of all this financial crisis, but I don't think they can do that. Okay, they got to get down to be reasonable and to get going with doing the doing the thing they need to do. So society advances by being able to handle more and more variables. You see, social science has 50 variables. Okay, science has only 5 variables. So you have order of magnitude more variables. Then life science has 500 variables. So this thing, they need to buckle down, and the society need to start to realize knowledge. Knowledge is going to be more and more complex. Today we only have science, and the science only tells us that we can control some material things. Okay, and this is definitely not what we're talking about. We're talking about social aging. Okay, biological aging is even more difficult. It's in life science. So basically, Sheriff just bringing all the subjects, and this
Thank you.
one is in correspond to our cultural level quotient. You see, which we actually published the paper. It's called cultural level quotient. It measures a society, a person, a people, to see where they stand in terms of society. You can tell. I can almost predict who's going to do what. Like a Russian, what they're going to do, what China's going to do. If China lead the world, what they're going to do, what Russia going to do, just by measuring, knowing their culture. You see. So I would say this subject is interesting, but the way too advanced for today's society. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Adam, what's your concluding remarks for today's session? Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you, Sharif. One interesting quirk I've noticed within futurist discourse is that feels to me that sometimes emphasis is placed on technological and innovation, whilst ethics and morality are sometimes left behind a little bit. I think think tanks and legislators and research teams need to figure out how to match advancements and innovation with ethics and morality, with technological and emerging technological advancements, because at the moment, in my opinion, it feels like one is being focused and concentrated on at the expense of the other. But of course, we don't want an imbalance going in the other direction either, where technological advancements are suppressed and hidden away because of fears and anxieties raised when ethics and morality are too readily and believingly, like just in caseism and whataboutism. But because of course, one of humanity's greatest assets and defined features and characteristics is access to adventure, exploration, into the mind, into philosophical thought. And a stagnating civilization is a tragedy, especially when framed teleologically. So God, I think morality wants to prevent the abuse and misuse of technology. And so when you raise the issue of technological abuse, one usually thinks of nuclear weapons and excessive surveillance, but cutting-edge solutions to the problems of aging, the inevitability could also be abused. I remember articles about future penal systems where using psychopharmacology, neurostimulation, future drugs, whatever, where a criminal could be sentenced to centuries or even millennia, trapped in a prison to serve such sentences, whereas in the outside real waking world, only a matter of hours or minutes pass by. It's extremely chilling and found within fantasy fiction and sci-fi as well. Forced immortality, against one's will, life extension against one's will, indefinite lifespans without the person consent as a punishment to or something, So, for example, I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream by Harlan Ellison, or The Jaunt by Stephen King, and thought experiments like Rocco's Basilisk on less long. So we need to safeguard humanity against what we could call, like weaponized longevity. So earlier I highlighted the importance of consent, free will regarding longevity. And if we weaponize longevity, by forcing them to live forever in solitary confinement, it's just horrific. So we must also honor the importance of consent going the other way as well, So yeah, this is my final thought for today.
Thank you. Professor Edward, what's your concluding remarks?
Yeah, just a second. Let me make sure I get my volume up properly. There we go. Yeah, this has been a very good discussion. I'll just end with a couple of points. We talked about the need for institutional changes if you want society to age well. And of course, I completely agree. For example, in terms of aging, our Food and Drug Administration in the United States does not recognize the processes that constitute aging as something that can have a treatment. And therefore, a lot of the research done on, for example, mitochondrial DNA, telomeres, and all these things we talked about, the FDA does not even recognize it. And so when you ask about why we don't have treatments that'll keep Hugh and David and myself young, well, it's because you have a system in place that simply literally doesn't allow it. So, and that's something that I am working to break down and smash completely. Lifelong learning as we get older, and as we need a society that is going to adjust and age well, we need lifelong learning. We need to reform our system in this country and elsewhere. The fact that, as you probably discussed yesterday, I suspect labor markets are changing much, much quicker. We need more knowledge-based workers and talent. And therefore, we're going to need a system that encourages and that facilitates lifelong learning, as opposed to you work for the same company for 30 or 40 years. That has not been the case for many, many decades. The final 2 points I'll make is social evolution. For those of you listening in the Asian Pacific area, please consult the work of F.A. Hayek, Nobel Prize winner, I think it was in 1972. His work on spontaneous order is path-breaking, where he looks at how institutions change and how you have unintended consequences from individual behavior that yields very good results in adjusting institutions. Take a look at F.A. Hayek's work on spontaneous order and the role of the individual and the free individual trying to solve problems with other free individuals. If we don't have freedom, we're not going to age very well. And the final thing I'll mention is aging for a society. It has to keep the core values. They have to manifest themselves differently, as we have discussed in this forum. In the United States, for example, we have to push back on and smash the cultural notion of postmodernism, that there's no reality except for the narrative. I'm sorry, if you're flying a plane, there is a reality. If you do it poorly, you're going to crash and everyone's going to die. Okay, this whole postmodernist notion must be banished. We have a neo-racism in this country where people are judged by their race and by what their sexual preferences and so forth, as opposed to the content of their character and their achievements. We have to smash that. We have to smash the whole Orwellian notion of let's censor any idea that we disagree with. We can't have a rational discussion. If it hurts our feelings, we have to censor it. We have to take the Enlightenment values of an open society, of science, of open discussion, and the value of the individual, and we have to have them adjusted for the changes in our society today, so that we can age very, very well indeed. And in fact, we can put off our personal aging to many, many decades in the future. And that's certainly what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. Professor David Smith, what's your concluding remarks?
Well, there's really unprecedented changes occurring worldwide in aging. As fertility, mortality rates decline, as the life expectancy expands, and we're really seeing this effect globally. With these changes affect individuals, families, governments, private sector organizations as they seek to answer the questions. As I said before, looking at healthcare, housing, income, Social Security, work, retirement, caregiving, and the burden of really disease and disabilities, which are part of the process. The chart you brought up, Sharif, is one that really shows the fact that those of us who are aging are really crossed over now to the people who are younger, with a steep decline in birth rates. And so societal aging is going to do nothing but increase. And you can see that's a very steep growth curve as you look at the percentage of people who are age 65 and above. So societal aging is something that we really need to work with as we look at it from all those different standpoints. But my concluding remarks on this is that as we look at what is happening, and this is actually a chart that was used on one of your programs months ago, Sharif, is that we see all these places where aging technology, age reversal, wellness and prevention, cell gene therapy, a lot of research, but wearables, AI-based diagnostics, and nanotechnology are all being brought to bear on the concept of aging and societal aging. And so we're seeing the places there being put well into place to deal with societal aging. But we need to go ahead and work the government policy and regulation part of it because it's lagging behind. We see the science, we see the research, we see all the different therapies and regenerative coming together, but we've got to work this all as a system. It's a complex system because it really has to work across the generations because aging affects every generation. And as we see that, we need to really work on how do we deal with it? How can we put the elements in place? And the truth that all our generations need to understand is we're all going to age. And we're all going to have to deal with societal aging. And even though it does not affect them all today, it will. And it's as with these trends, with the declining birth rate, the accelerating percentage of people older, we have to deal with it sooner than later. So, Sharif, that's my concluding remarks.
Thank you, Professor Ching, Professor David Smith, Professor Edward, and Mr. Adam for joining today's session. Social aging is very, very important, and we need to create more awareness for aging. And beside that, you know that we have very important conference next year, March. Also from Malaysia, Singapore, and other developing nations, we are actually launching our research and training and development activities. So from our speakers, those who want to support our initiative, they can join in our team. And I request all of our audience, please share our content with your government, with your corporation, and with academy. And besides that, many grassroots level school, they regularly communicate with us. So I want to give them special thanks. And please utilize our content. And with this content, your students can develop startup, they can develop awareness campaign, they can do case study and many interesting things. So I request that those who want to utilize our around 570 episode, they can. It's 100% free. We never charge for anyone. And also we have School of Talent Economy. From School of Talent Economy, we are actually taking very short courses based on topic. And we are publishing many papers. Those who are interested to join in our research team, they can join. So that is very small initiative. With our limited capacity, we try to help the developing nations people. And I want to give thanks to all of our speakers who regularly support World Talent Economy Forum. Tomorrow we have our very special debate on singularity. So hopefully all of the speakers will join and we will get more support from our audience. Thank you, Professor David Smith, and thank you, Professor Ching, for joining today's session.